This is gonna hurt. It's time for the Suffering Podcast.
There are jobs that are tasked with being the anchor in storms of chaos. A special and unique person is willing to take on this burden without fear and without trepidation, always willing to run towards the hazard with selfless and pure intentions. Service to others can have many unexpected outcomes. There is joy, there is purpose, and there is pain. The multitude of emotions often overlap and blend into the other, causing a range of emotions to strike all at once. Being hit with a range of emotions on a daily basis will take its toll on your soul. The strength to continue is the superpower that must ever be present to complete this destiny. Your mental strength determines your longevity inside the job. I'm Kevin Donaldson, always here with Mike Felice, and welcome to the Suffering Podcast. If you're a fan of overcoming suffering and overcoming adversity, then we're for you, because that's what we do here and that's the stories that we highlight. So do me a favor, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, please comment, ring the bell so you can get notified of all of our new content. Now you can join. Follow us on all social media so you can find out what we're up to. On this episode of the Suffering Podcast, we welcome David Berez to talk about the suffering of resilience. There's a whole reason why I chose that term. I think I hit the nail on the head. Thank you so much for coming in.
Thank you for having me. I'm grateful to be here with you.
Before we get into anything, let's throw a big shout out to our marquee sponsor. That's Toyota of Hackensack. We don't trust anybody as retired police, and we certainly don't trust anybody as podcasters, but we do trust the boys at Toyota Hackensack. So if you're looking for a car, go to toyotahackensack.com. They know what they're doing over there. So, David, each week, you've listened to a couple episodes. I know you don't want to look at me, so you don't watch me on YouTube. That's okay. I won't take offense to it. Each week, we take a question from our audience. This question comes from Sojourn. How do you recover from a bad public event? We've all had times in our life where we get a little embarrassed. This one's very, very personal to me this week. We get a little embarrassed. Maybe our ego gets a little too high, get bumped down, get humbled a little bit, and then you got to recover. Then you got to pick up the pieces. So what's your method for doing something like that?
So I think the professional response to that is you got to separate yourself from the incident. You are not the incident. We all make mistakes. We all screw up. We all take risks. Some of them don't work out, and some of them are not intentional, and their accidents happen, right? So if you separate
we're far from professional in here.
So if you separate yourself from the incident and you deal with the incident itself and the fallout and the recovery from that, but know that it's not who you are, I think that's a good start. Now, I say that as a professional response. I can't say that I've lived up to that myself. It was towards the very end of my career. I had an embarrassing moment where I had a body camera issue. I think we've all probably been there along the road at some point or another.
I've been gone too long for body cameras, but MVRs, yes, I have had issues with those.
And, it's funny because for me, it wasn't actually the camera. The physical camera broke, so it's not like it didn't record something. It's not like it was covered. I wasn't hiding anything. It was a piece of broken equipment. It could have been any other widget. But they did an internal on me, and it was didn't go the way I wanted to. I felt like that I was being a target for something other than the camera itself, and I didn't handle it well. And it was almost the point where I would take my life over it, to be honest with you. And that was the intention. Fortunately, it didn't happen. I'm sitting here with you.
I was going to ask you if you survived.
I did, which is a good thing. Yeah. It's not the ghost of David at your podcast.
But it's those moments that we have, and we all have those moments. But a lot of times our ego gets elevated, and we think we're bigger than this. And then all of a sudden this embarrassing event comes up. Listen, it's no different than going up in front of a bunch of people to go speak with a booger hanging out of your nose.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And one of my big MVR snafus was I poked the bear a lot. Okay, so every time the MVR was on, I tried my hardest to fart.
It's the funniest thing we can do, right?
Right.
No matter how old we get, it's still humorous.
And my lieutenant would review, and we'd have to sit down for monthly reviews, and he'd be like, really, with all the fart? And I'm like, what do you want me to do? I can't help myself. Are you saying, because I have irritable bowel syndrome, and that is technically defined as a disability. So according to the Americans with disability, and that's how far I went down the
awesome.
rabbit hole. That's why my department. That's why I never got promoted.
Yeah, I had the same issue.
Yeah,
I never got
you
promoted.
just gotta listen. When they're screwing with you, you got to give it back. It's like bullying. Now, I've recently had some publicly embarrassing things happen by my own hand. You know, I can't. I got to own them. I got to take responsibility for them. And I caught a lot of crap for the way that I handled it because I asked somebody like you to come in here and spill their guts, to be vulnerable, to tell what you're thinking, to tell your deepest, darkest secrets. What a hypocrite I would be if I didn't do the same. So that's how I felt. And, you know, I did an Instagram Live the next day. And, you know, it's almost like a political move because, you know, any public relations event, you try to get ahead of the damage. So I knew it was already out there. And I knew I was going to get, I didn't want anybody to find out from anybody else but me. So I let it out. I got ahead of it, you know, and I watched this with politicians. I know I'm not one side or the other, but the politician who has those skeletons in their closet that does their best to hide those skeletons, then when they come out, they're like, oh no, the ones who get over it very quickly are the ones that say, yeah, that skeleton's in there. You want to talk about it? Let's talk about it, you know, and it goes away like that. So that's my theory. Whether that's right or not, I don't know. But ultimately, letting it and getting it off my chest, not holding it in there, was better for me.
I would agree. I think anytime something happens to you, owning it is so important. And you know, to give credit where credit's due, I think Jocko Willink did it best with his book, Extreme Ownership.
Yes.
And he speaks to that from a leadership perspective. And I would agree that every time I've done that, anytime something came up, I was like, yeah, I did that. Sorry. I'll do better next time. What's anybody going to say at that point?
Now, police departments in general, and this happened in the police department in the town that I live in. Have you ever been on a road job where they signed you out for 8 hours and you didn't work 8 hours? We've all done it. We've all done
100%.
it. Anybody who's got 20 plus years on, everybody's done it because you're part of their scam. And there's certain companies that'll do it. You're part of their scam. They're going to go sit in a parking lot, whatever. Somebody gets popped for it. He goes in there. Yep, I did. Now, this is a guy with a clean jacket. Never any discipline. He gets popped for it. Owns up to it. Does the right thing. Knew he was going to take a rip for whatever. Even though the administration, every single one of them did it. They fire him. They fire him. So here's how I look at that. When you arrest a criminal and you say, give it up and we'll go easier, right? It's a bargaining chip. Well, with administration, if you're telling the truth and they're dropping the hammer on you, what's the point? What's the point of telling the truth? I might as well fight it, right? So you're kind of hamstringing yourself. I don't like doing it that way.
Yeah, no, for me, it's more about my own values, my own ethics. I got to do what's right. And using the example you just used with overtime, we would always have the sheets that the construction companies would give you. It said, you know, X amount of hours on it. But we also had to do an internal time card. Mm-hmm. And our place is so antiquated, we were literally punching cards in the time. It was ridiculous. So you would put your time in, your time out. And I'll put 3.5 hours, even if the sheet that the construction company gave me said 8. Mm-hmm. And then, of course, you get called on the carpet. Well, what's the discrepancy for? You know, did you lie to them? I'm like, whoa, they filled that out. Mm-hmm. Here's my time card. You do what you got to do. Pay me for whatever you want to pay me. Here's the paperwork.
Smart way to do it. Put it in their hands. Make them make the error.
Absolutely.
Yeah. But what, your car, you like the Flintstones? Did they go in and the pterodactyl bit the card?
Just about.
That was kind of a long-winded, roundabout way to answer your question. I hope we answered your question for you. And thank you for sending out one in. Please keep sending in your questions, and we will try to get them on the air. So, David, you drove up here. Aggravating drive. For me, it was an aggravating drive tonight because and that's why as soon as I got stuck in the traffic, I knew where you were heading. I was like, yeah, you got to avoid this go around.
Tough route.
I appreciate you coming. Thank you so much for coming in. I think we connected on LinkedIn, was it?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah.
I had reached out to you. I saw what you were doing, which is amazing work, by the way. So thank you for the support that you give law enforcement through your network. It's amazing.
You know, the funny thing is I'll never stop supporting law enforcement. I had to deal with law enforcement over the weekend. And each one of them, I was, as bad of a situation as was, each one of them handled themselves with professionalism, with compassion. I couldn't have asked, and I reached out to each individual one because I know them, I know them real well. I reached out to each individual one. I'm sorry to put you in that position. I appreciate the way you handled it. I know you had to do what you had to do, and it's like I didn't want any bad feelings, but they really did do a great job.
That's awesome to hear.
So it sucks to be on the receiving end of some stuff, but anyway, so tell us a little bit about. I know enough about you from reading about you, but I want you to tell everybody a little bit about how you grew up, where you grew up.
So I grew up in Mercer County. I was the child of a slightly dysfunctional family. My parents were divorced by the time I was 13-ish. My grandparents were from Germany, my mom's parents, and they came here in 1938, just after Kristallnacht, which is when the Jews were the persecution truly started in Germany. All the business were destroyed. And
wait, so German Jews?
That's me.
German Jews. Wow.
So when you talk about life experiences, obviously I was not alive then, but that stuff does get pulled forward into the way I was raised. So there's certainly parts of that, my family's traditions that make me a part of who I am. And I think that goes for everybody. Some have more interesting stories than others.
So the German Jews, and I'm a big history guy, right? So the German Jews, here's what I love about the German Jews. The Germans never liked Jews. So they always, I don't know what it is. I think the best description is the beginning of Inglourious Bastards. Probably the best description of why they hate the Jews. It just, the rat and the squirrel. Did you ever hear that one? Yep. But so what they did was they gave the Jewish people all the shit jobs. They gave them all the shit jobs. And the Jewish people from lemons made this wonderful cocktail of lemonade out of them.
Absolutely.
And they became very successful. And guess what? They still hated them. They hated them even worse because we gave you all the shit jobs. You're supposed to be poor. You're supposed to be in the ghettos.
Some of the most resilient people in history, for sure.
Yeah, it's bred into them 4,000 years. They've been getting their ass kicked for a while. Except now, you don't mess with an Israeli.
No, that would be an accurate statement. They are some tough people, tough country.
No, when you get that beat into you every day, you better develop some thick skin. And, I always pride myself on my 6% Jewish heritage.
Nice.
When I did that, what did I do? Not 23andMe. I think I did Ancestry or something.
So you gave the government all of your DNA data and they follow up on you?
Oh, yeah. They know everything about me now. But I remember calling my parents up and go, all right, who's the Jew in the family? That's okay. I'm 6.
You know what? At some point, we all came from the same rib, right?
Well, we're supposed to anyway. So you grew up in Mercer County.
I did.
What kind of dysfunction?
So my father was a philanderer, adulterer, and was not the greatest dad on the planet for sure. Definitely, everything he taught me was how not to do things. So I learned through the negative, which has worked out for me because I watch his mistakes and I'm trying not to repeat them. So my kids don't grow up screwed up as I did. But yeah, no, so it was good. My mom worked really hard to put my sister and I into a good position, put us both through college with the support of my grandparents, and gave us a really good life. And my mom and I had a struggling relationship for sure, as a teenage son and his mom might. But she taught me a lot of good lessons in life, and really proud of the product that she produced. And I just live every day to try to live up to her standards and her wants for me.
Are they still with us?
So neither one of my parents are alive. My mom died when I was 27. My dad, I'm not exactly sure. I didn't have a relationship with him much after they got divorced.
So going through such a harsh childhood, it is a harsh way to look at things. Personality-wise, how did it affect you? Did you act out? Were you the drinker? Were you the drug abuser?
So I definitely made some bad choices. I remember with my friend Sean in 9th grade, his parents would leave him home alone while his parents went on his dad's business trips together. And I would stay over there. My mom didn't know that his parents weren't there. We'd take out the car, go for rides, and silly stuff. Early drinking starter. Not to the point where I was troubled by it, but certainly dabbled in things I shouldn't be.
Sure, you're home alone. How old are you? So I can know.
I'm 49.
You're 40. Okay, so I'm 50. We're the same age. You're talking early 80s,
Yeah.
mid 80s,
Mid-'80s, yeah.
Spice Channel. You had to, you wired it a little
We're
bit.
trying to go through the
static.
the blurriness and
Is
the
that an
cable,
elbow
with
or
the
a
cable
boob?
buttons.
Who
Exactly.
Who gives a shit?
Exactly.
But those were fun times to grow up in.
Yeah. When MTV still had music on the channel?
Yes. Yeah. So do you remember racing home from school to watch Thriller?
So I had it on a VCR tape.
Thriller was played when it aired.
Yeah.
It was played at 12 o'clock, 3 o'clock, 5 o'clock. They had it scheduled. And I remember racing home from school because we got out at like 2:45 to go watch Thriller at 3 o'clock.
Yeah, my biggest vice for TV was the Dukes of Hazzard, which was always a conflict because it was on at 7 o'clock or 8 o'clock on a Friday night. And growing up, my mom tried to get us to go to the synagogue every Friday night for services. And we weren't religious, but she felt it was the best thing she could do to, keep me straight and narrow. But yeah, so Dukes of Hazzard was my go-to, and we finally got a VCR. I don't remember what year that was, but it was pretty cool to be able to record it and then watch it on Saturdays. It was fantastic.
A-Team too?
I did periodically. I wasn't an A-Team junkie.
So Dukes of Hazzard, somewhat. I mean, listen, I always like watching Daisy Duke. She was hot,
No doubt.
But then with Enos and I there were some parts of it I didn't like, and the wavy hair and stuff. But I was a Magnum guy. I was a big Magnum PI guy.
That was a great show too.
I mean, greatest mustache in the world. To this day, he's got the greatest mustache in the world. So drinking, drugs, and how did your mother do her best to keep a handle on you?
She didn't know. She didn't know the bad things that were happening. And I wasn't, truly troubled except for my grades in school. That was the biggest part. But most of that was, I think, I was seen as the troubled child often in school. Nice kid, but troubled. Today we, would diagnose myself as ADHD. I definitely have it as an adult. Certain things I work hard at to continue to overcome. But as a child, we were just troubled kids back then. We didn't have any diagnoses for these things.
Well, what was your intelligence like on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being, brainiac, 1 being?
As a child, I don't know, maybe as I look back, 4 or 5. I was always told I had good potential.
Is that like when somebody introduced you to a girl and she's got great eyes?
Yes, exactly right.
Great eyes.
But I loved algebra so much in high school. I took it twice. So I just think I didn't know how to learn.
Okay, all right. Because I had a similar. I was the bad kid, but mostly because I was bored.
Yeah, absolutely. I was definitely bored in school. I think that has something to do with intelligence. But for me, I think it had a lot to do with I just didn't know how to learn. I didn't know how to absorb the information. I didn't know how to regurgitate it. I didn't know how to study. So I didn't do well. I graduated high school with a 1.8. I think it was, a grace move by the administration because they just wanted me out. But I did go to college, so made it in.
I watched that with a couple people in my life where the nice ones were able to just squeak through, and they shouldn't. That's
Right.
the problem.
And that was my problem.
If they just squeak through, hey, listen, it's about moving cattle at that point.
Yep.
But you said you went to college. How'd you go to college with a 1.8?
That's a great question. So I applied to a bunch of different schools. It wasn't Harvard or Yale. And the only school I got into was Hofstra University out on Long Island, which is a great school. But they had they had a program there called New College. And in New College, it was modeled after Oxford's New College, which, by the way, I could never get into Oxford. But the New College program had a subset program called the Division of Special Studies, and it was for kids with potential, and in quotes. So the key to getting into that was you had to go early. So I went in early August of my freshman year, and I had to take a 6-week class called Research Methods. And they taught you how to learn. They taught you how to do research. They taught you how to write college papers. And honestly, that changed my trajectory in life, that class.
Was it a particular professor that did that?
It was somebody within the New College school. I don't remember the professor, to be honest with you, but I just remember the class. I remember what I learned in that class, and it changed the way I thought, the way I learned, the way I was able to regurgitate information like I've never been able to do before.
So it's a lot of times it takes that one person or that one class to really inspire you to do something else.
Absolutely.
I was an English major in college, and I was bad in every class. Like, I was bad in every class, but the one class I was never bad in was English. And with any type of book, I learned how to read a book. Okay, a lot of people don't learn how to read a book; they just get through it. And here's exactly what I was taught, and I use it to this day with my kids. You are the producer, the director, the actors, and you are creating your own movie. See it in your mind, and as you're reading it, envision it, and then you create your whole movie. And then when I heard that, it was such a revolutionary idea for me, and that's how I started reading books. And lo and behold, I got a minor in Shakespeare and all that stuff.
Wow. There's so much in the humanities, and I know we'll get into that later as well. But that ended up being my graduate school thesis, was the use of humanities for emotional regulation in law enforcement. And it has to do with the immersive and receptive culture of literature, of the visual arts and music. But yeah, so reading is so powerful. The concept of storytelling is super powerful. And when you can create that in that environment and you make it your own, and you have that transformative or that transportation experience through somebody else's story, it's such a powerful experience.
You know who does that really well? You ever listen to Mr. Ballin?
No.
Dude, I'm gonna ruin you.
Uh-oh.
I'm gonna ruin you. And it's another podcast, so I shouldn't even be doing this. But don't worry, he's like top 2 or 3 always.
I only listened to this one, so I'm not familiar with the others.
Okay, Andrew, make sure we promote the hell out of this one. But so Mr. Ballin, he's a retired Navy SEAL, but he doesn't talk about Navy SEAL shit. He tells strange, dark, and mysterious stories. Now, I found this guy, came up on my YouTube page, and I just listened. Oh, this looks interesting, and I went on it. He is probably the best storyteller I have ever heard, because he has a way to paint this picture. Almost as if it was kind of the same way that I started reading books. Paint that picture. And like 20, 30, 40 minutes max are his things. On your ride home tonight, I want you to look up Mr. Ballin. His name is John B. Allen, Mr. Ballin. And you will get hooked. He's got like 5 years worth of content, so you'll have plenty of it. It is absolutely amazing. You are listening to it, you are living it, and it's something special.
Thank you for sharing that. I'm super excited. The whole concept of storytelling, especially from a powerful storyteller.
And there's a couple of them out there, and he's one of them. He's one of them. So it sounds like from your thesis, you've always been interested in this world of law enforcement, but I know you went through a couple different steps prior to getting there.
So when I graduated, I'll go back to my college experience. Actually, let's go even a little bit before that. Back in my high school days, I was a volunteer EMT in the town that I grew up in, starting at the age of 14. And then when I was 16, you're able to legally ride on the ambulances. And then by the time I was 18, I was a rescue technician and doing all the fun stuff, the stuff that you more likely see on TV than the junk that goes on in the back of an ambulance. So I was always into the whole concept of emergency services. And here in New Jersey, EMTs, paramedics, it's a great job. They do amazing work. They don't get compensated nearly enough for the work that they do.
Bottom barrel.
Oh, man, it's terrible. So I recognized that early on.
The key component to any law enforcement officer being the best version of themselves is through education. Sherry Alsop is a leader in providing that education to police agencies, preparing them for the all too frequent dealings with sexual assault victims.
You've seen Sherry on episode 169 of the Suffering Podcast. She survived incest and almost daily sexual assault, so she comes from a place of experience and true understanding.
Sherry has the intelligence, commitment, and compassion to open the eyes of those on the front lines, while providing the tools to effectively deal with a difficult situation. Sherry's instruction comes from experience and multiple certifications.
Training with Sherry will offer on-site training, customized schedules, specialized instruction tailored from a victim's perspective.
You are going to hear Sherry's heart-wrenching but inspiring survivor story. Learn proprietary trauma-informed training techniques. Uncovered victim-centered interview methods while earning continuing education credits according to your state guidelines. To be the best, you must learn from the best. Let Sherry also guide you through the delicate cases of sexual assault from a victim's point of view.
Be a source of comfort to those victims affected by these traumatic experiences while producing a solid investigation and uncovering details that often go unnoticed.
To find out more or to contact Sherry Alsop, go to sherryalsop.com. That's SherryAllsup.com.
And then when I got to college, I went into work for public safety for the university as like a work study type thing. And I just fell in love with the concept of helping people in a way that wasn't just Band-Aids and cravats. It was just a different feeling. You felt like...
Cravat, by the way, is the sling.
Yeah, this little this mesh arm sling things. So it was just, I don't know, it was a different feeling, a different way of helping people. So I ended up doing an internship with the Freeport Police Department on Long Island for school. And I was exposed to stuff that I did not even know existed in this world. Evil, disgusting, horrible activities conducted by a human that I didn't think, your worst nightmares couldn't imagine. The one that sticks with me to this day is a father that killed his child because he was mad at him. Just evil, beyond evil.
So you get, and that's an interesting thing for you to do in college, because in college you're free-spirited, you think the world's all sunshine and rainbows, you're very idealistic, I'm going to go out there and change the world, I'm going to make my mark on this world, and you neglect the harsh realities of life.
Yeah, for sure.
So for you to do that in college, prior to going into that field, prior to doing that internship, but you were an EMT, so you had
exposure.
You had exposure to it.
But, you know, EMTs, firefighters in the ball breaking world, we're second responders, right? Like the police always get there first. They're always going to be the ones to secure the scene. So you're prepared because they come out and tell you what you're going to go in on.
Mm-hmm.
As police officers, you can discover it yourself. And sometimes that's a harsh thing to find.
Yeah, there's true evil in this world.
Yeah, no doubt.
And unfortunately, police get a front row seat to it.
Yeah, and it rewires us. You know, you do this job long enough, and when we talk about healing people, we talk about changing the neural pathways in your brain to kind of form new habits, to form new relationships, to form new ways of doing things. But it took 20, 25, 30 years, however long you were on the job, to screw you up that far.
So we just had Anna Peishin here, who's a therapist, husband's a cop. And what she said something that I don't think I'll ever forget. So when you experience trauma as a civilian, you feel that, right? You feel that emotion coming out and you react to it emotionally. Police officers see it so much that we have to shut off that initial emotion, that humanity emotion. And then what happens when we go home? We've taught ourselves to neglect those emotions.
Correct.
And now we're starting to do it at home. And now it's this thing where, and I always said, I talk about it a lot, you know, it's that job, if you allow it, will make you lose your soul.
It'll eat you up.
Yeah.
100%. And I think when we talk about what you just said with the compartmentalizing the emotions, it's important to understand how that is built upon itself. So the average citizen or civilian sees about 4 to 6 traumas in their lifetime. A police officer, firefighters, police officers more so, will see 400 to 600 in their career, about 20 per year.
I've heard high as 800.
Yes, that number is out there. I think the literature doesn't go that far. I think the literature is still looking at 400 to 600.
I have a bibliographical note on that in my book. Yes. So the one that's in my book is 4 to 6,
Yeah.
same one you said.
And so when you consider that, and that's a shortened time span, that's only 25 years on average, between 20 and 30, depending on your career, and you're compounding all of those and compartmentalizing all of those. And then when you look at the mental health numbers, yeah, retirees are still killing themselves. They're still engaged in self-destructive behaviors. And
he took his life on May 9th. He was retired since 2015.
It catches up.
Yep.
It does catch up. And if you're not processing it, you know, there's a great book out there, The Body Keeps the Score.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're not recognizing the symptoms in your own body, forget about your mind, forget about your head. The symptoms in your own body, you're doing yourself a disservice. And it's also up to the people around you, your loved ones, the people that are closest to you, to recognize the changes in you and help you get to the point where you're getting help.
So when you got out of college, were you disgusted or were you hooked on this job?
Hooked.
You were hooked. It was
Absolutely
just
hooked. That's part of the ADHD problem. We always have these compulsivities, right? So I didn't know how to get into it. I didn't come from it from my family.
Me neither.
I didn't have exposure to it other than the rescue squad. I went back home after, I guess it was, I don't remember what year in college it was. It was probably my junior year, going into my senior year of college, that winter break. I met with my buddy Todd, who's a police officer in East Windsor, the town I grew up in, where I was a volunteer. I was like, Todd, I think I want to do this job. So he kind of walked me through the steps of what could be next or how to do it. And I went back to college for, that senior year. And I'm like, yeah, this is for me. So
you're talking 96, 97?
Yeah, I graduated in 97. So it was, 95, 96, and then senior year 97, trying to figure out the plan. Had that internship. I also had an internship in East Windsor when I realized this was what I wanted to do. And what was really hard for me was following that internship. That was for my junior year. And then one of the East Windsor police officers took his own life. The guy that was a mentor to me. He would have been chief of that agency for sure. He was a detective sergeant when it occurred. And we still don't really know the details. Some people do, but they hid it from everybody.
Yeah, there's one in my town like that too. You think back to because there's one where it's police officers are the worst at keeping secrets inside the department.
100%.
But every once in a while, this one in particular, there's theories.
Yep.
But nobody knows.
And the theories and the rumors are always worse than probably what actually happened, right? So
I always think when somebody does that, the guy I'm talking about, he had like 24 and a half years. So whatever came up on him was so big that I have to believe he was in danger of losing his pension.
Interesting.
And we just had a sheriff from the sheriff of Passaic County just did it. He was out to lunch with people. He walked in the bathroom and did it in the bathroom.
Yeah.
But again, this was like a 40-year guy.
Yeah.
So you theorize, you break it down.
Yeah.
Were there signs? Was somebody looking out for him? But you
try to learn from it so it doesn't happen to you or to the next guy, right?
But unfortunately, we all step into that trap from time to time. Now, with you, how long did it take you when you got out of college? How long did it take you to get hired?
So I graduated May of 97. I was hired by East Windsor in December of 99. But the interim was where I learned the most I've ever learned in my entire life about life. And I was an intern with the New York City Medical Examiner's Office for a year.
Oh, Dr. Bodden?
Exactly.
Yeah. And how do I know Dr. Bodden? Because I used to watch Autopsy on HBO.
Yeah, he was a character for sure.
Yeah.
Great pathologist. The people in that office were amazing. Definitely a little kooky, but they were amazing nonetheless.
The worst sense of humors I thought police officers had the worst sense of humor.
No, pathologists. Forensic pathologists.
Medical examiners and funeral directors.
Yep. Absolutely.
They're bad. They're bad.
Yeah, it was a great experience though, man. If you can die from it, I've seen it. And it's New York City, right? So it's a lot.
You're getting the reps in.
Yeah, it was an education that this Jersey kid from the suburbs never expected to have.
Wow.
But it was cool.
That's pretty cool, though. You got to work with the pathologist. Yeah. I know one pathologist in the world, Dr. Bodden.
Yeah, he was a special guy. And they were really lenient about letting us get in there and do things.
Oh, really?
Yeah, especially if it wasn't a high-profile case. They would teach us, how to cut the bodies. They would teach us what to look for. They would let us hold the organs. We got our hands in there. It was awesome.
So my first autopsy I went to, I was always a gym guy, right? So I was always into physiology and how the body works, but not until my first autopsy. It was in the academy. They took us down to the medical examiner's office, and the freezer broke that day. The smell.
Oh, it's ruthless.
The smell was brutal. So I go in there, and I was hungry. I had crackers with me. They cut this. A 43-year-old man, and he's on the table like this. I'm going to give her, I shouldn't say this, but I'm going to say it, so I don't care. The gallows humor. Here's what gallows humor is. You're seeing something that you're not supposed to see, and your mind is trying to wrap around it, so you make a very inappropriate comment. And I'll never forget the comment I made, because even the medical examiner looked at me going, wow. 43-year-old man there, naked as the day he was born. I'm like, Doc, you don't have to cut him open. I already know how he died. They're like, what are you talking about, kid? You don't know. I'm 26 years old. I'm like, what do you mean you don't know where he died? I'm like, no, he died of smallpox. Because when we die and we're laid out on that table, naked as the day we're born, we're not impressing anybody.
Nah,
it's
nope.
Very few of us anyway. But I'm sitting there, and I remember when they cut into the bowel tract. I always heard that was the worst, and I had, I had everything. I had the Vicks. I didn't put it on. I had the peppermints, every trick. And I started eating the crackers as soon as they. First of all, I almost gagged because the smell hit, and somebody behind me, I hear this. I go, no. Somebody goes running
That was
out.
your trigger.
Because somebody saw me eating as I was doing it. But I did fatal motor vehicle accident investigation, so I had to go to a lot of autopsies. I always found them absolutely fascinating.
I agree.
If you've never seen human fat out in the open air, it's like this yellow. Yeah, it's crazy.
You'll never eat a McDonald's again.
No. I'll never eat sausage and peppers again, because that was pulled out of somebody's stomach, digested. It was fascinating to me. It's like when, they pull the face, they cut the face under here, pull it back, and you see the skull, you see the brain, you see the heart, you see all these things that you only read in books. And I don't care how many pictures you look at on the internet, it'll never do justice.
What always got me was when they would pull the vitreous fluid out of the eyes.
Oh, they would.
That was, and then the eye would just kind of like shrink down, and then they shoot saline back in it, and it looks like Beetlejuice. That was wild for me.
The pituitary gland, they pull the pituitary gland out, just looks like a little wisdom tooth.
Yep.
And just that stuff. So I was able to separate that being a human being.
Yeah.
And now it is a science experiment.
Correct.
Which we're all going to get there one day. And I always tell people now, it's like, if you care about that person and there's no reason for it, do not get an autopsy.
Yeah, no need.
Because the jokes going around are crazy. But so you get hired in December of 99 by the East Windsor Police Department.
Correct.
What was your first wake-up call? You're on the job now. Now you're not an intern. You have more responsibility. What was your first wake-up call in the police department?
We were chasing a guy through the woods that was irregular for us, and I went to go draw down on him. My gun wasn't there.
No.
The worst feeling you could have.
Was it in the lockbox, in the cell?
Oh, no. It was there when I started. It wasn't there when I got there.
Oh.
So we had these old single snap, single retention holsters that were more like a parade holster that we were using on duty. And mine was brand new. I was still on coach. And, if that snap goes, the whole thing just opens up. The leather goes back to its original stamped position.
You're brand new. That squeaky leather. Yeah,
exactly. And that just popped open, and gun bounced out, and the foot chase never even knew it.
Oh, my gosh.
And I went to go draw down on him, and there's no gun there. I'm like, oh, shit.
Did you hold your finger out?
I did. We had expandable PR-24s. So I flipped that thing over, and I held out my expandable PR-24.
It's quick thinking, no?
And my coach looks over to me. His name was Skippy. Skippy looks over to me and goes, with these big, like, Beetlejuice eyes. He looks at me and goes, oh, no. I'm like, oh, yeah.
This is happening.
Yep.
We have to embrace it.
And then in that pause, the kid we were chasing noticed it, too. And all three of us just start laughing our asses off.
That's a new way to bring somebody down. Make them laugh so hard that they can't run.
Yep. So he got locked up. And then obviously we spent the next 4 hours. We found it, thankfully. But my boss at the time, who wasn't a sergeant, he was just the OIC, because our sergeant was out. And I was like, how do I write this up? He goes, with 3 words, never happened, bro.
That's a good boss.
Yep.
Okay? That's a good boss, especially when you're new. I was fortunate to have one.
By the way, when he made sergeant, the best boss I ever had my entire career. We're still friends to this day.
And that guy will never be chief because he was the best boss ever.
Yep, didn't make it past sergeant.
Yes. But those bosses who look out for you and not over you
Correct.
Are so vitally important to your law enforcement education. I'm talking on-the-job law enforcement education, because those are the people they're true leaders. Usually, they're true leaders where you want to do good to make them look good.
Yeah.
A boss doesn't tell you do this just for the sake of doing it. You want to perform because this guy's doing the right thing. He's doing the job. But yeah, that's a
it
shit sandwich.
It was an eye opener for sure.
Yeah.
It was an eye opener, and obviously things got better after that. But the next big eye opener was 9/11.
Yeah, I was in the academy during 9/11.
Yeah, that one hit me hard in different ways, honestly, in 3 separate ways. And there's actually a very current story related to that I just experienced with my wife. But I'll tell the 9/11 story first. I worked the night of September 10th into September 11th, so midnights. I got home and normally would go right to bed. Normally would have a drink or two, put myself down, go right to bed. There was some kind of peacefulness in the air that morning.
It was a beautiful day.
Really, I remember it very vividly, and I didn't have a sip of alcohol. I lied in bed, staring out the window with the windows open because it was pretty warm for a September day, and I just drifted off to sleep. No TV, no blackout curtains, no cop warnings, and I just drifted off to sleep. And then it felt like eternity, but the phone rang at like 15 minutes later, and this was still when we had the box caller IDs.
Yeah.
So I look over, it was my sister's phone number. I went, uh-oh. And my sister and I are very close. She knows exactly what my schedule is. She lives in Virginia. She was living there at that time. And she's a nurse, so she gets it. She was working shift work for a while. And I answered the phone because I knew it had to be bad. She's like, you okay? I'm like, yeah, I'm sleeping. Why? What's up? She goes, you need to turn the TV on. I'm like, are you fucking kidding me right now? Like, what I'm... She goes, no. Dude, turn the TV on. So obviously I turned it on to the towers being hit. And they hadn't fallen yet. And she was like, you might want to consider your options. I'm like, all right, got you. So hung up the phone, went to work. This is an hour after I got home or whatever. And my partner rolled in the back lot the same time I did. And we looked at each other like, we're going? I was like, yeah, we're going. So we run into the office, see the patrol lieutenant sitting there and like, hey, LT, what are we doing? He goes, about what? I'm like, Twin Towers just came down and there's a lot of death and problems and we're under attack. He's like, yeah, we saw that on TV. I'm like, so what are we doing? He's like, kid, not our city, not our problem. And that's a quote.
No shit.
Not our city, not our problem. So where I lived or worked in East Windsor, exited on the New Jersey Turnpike, door to door, 50 miles to New York City. And from the High Bridge overpass in our town, you could sometimes see the skyline. And that day you saw the smoke. Not our city, not our problem. So my partner and I are like, yeah, fuck this. So we took off our PD gear, put on our PBA gear, and we packed our bags and got in my car and we went up there. We parked in Jersey City. Cops are cops, right? So you show your badge, you get flagged into wherever you got to go. We hop on the fireboat from Jersey City and went across into Lower Manhattan. And we just did what we could. We tried to hook up with people we could hook up with, and went over to the medical examiner's office trailer, introduced myself. They remembered who I was. So we did what we could. But so that was interesting.
But that's
game changer for me.
There's I'll say this till the day I die. There's certain people who never should be cops. We are tasked to run the places where people run away from.
Yep.
That lieutenant,
good dude, by the way, just short-sighted.
That was not the right.
Correct.
That was not the right thing.
Correct.
Especially at the time.
Yeah.
Especially at the time, because even if put you out on a post somewhere, because we had no idea what was going on that day.
Yeah.
23 years later, it's still very fresh in my mind. As a matter of fact, one of our last adventures, I lost several people, but one really good friend worked for Cantor Fitzgerald. We were in New York speaking at the Anti-Terrorism Council Symposium, and it's right at Ground Zero. I had never been back to Ground Zero. And we went through the 9/11 Museum. It's the first time I could ever bring myself to get back there. And it was a humbling experience. And I was just thinking about that too, because I want to bring my kids there. My kids were not born yet. It's like when you heard about Pearl Harbor.
Yeah.
And I've heard my grandfather talk about Pearl Harbor. He'd tell you where he was, what was going on. And that was another world away in Hawaii. This was right at our front door And I lived through that stuff. I think that day changed a lot of people.
Had to.
Yeah. If you were in this job for the right reasons.
Yeah.
So you go on in your career, anything outstanding, anything special?
I was a drug recognition expert for most of my career. I really enjoyed pulling people off the road that were under the influence, whether it was alcohol or anything else.
Did you have a judge who recognized it?
So the judge was good. We had a few judges throughout my career. I knew them all personally outside of work, so it gave me a little edge of credibility that I wasn't presenting them with some voodoo science, which is what a lot of people had looked at the DRE program as, unfortunately. But yeah, I did pretty good with it. Probably 500 cases throughout the course of my career. I didn't lose any. We had to plea on a bunch of them, but only because it was the right thing to do.
That's the game.
Yeah. But I didn't lose any. And to the point where, and I won't mention their names, was a duo that was known for their being defense experts. One of them happened to be a retired state police lieutenant who ran the drug alcohol unit.
I know exactly who it is.
I embarrassed the crap out of them on the stand for a case, and I pointed out that he wasn't being truthful with his testimony, and I, at the time, called it a lie. I regret it now because I don't think it was intentional, but he was misinformed with the testimony he was giving. Called him out on it, and they dismissed the case completely. There was no guilty. There was no because he was so embarrassed by it that he didn't want the case to go forward. So I worked with them to make sure that their testimony was not part of the record.
Okay.
And
that was magnanimous of you. Very.
They never came back to East Windsor again. That was part of the deal.
So there's a lot of judges in New Jersey that didn't recognize the DRE
There
program.
still isn't. Miraculously, I don't understand why. But
so I was always, I'm so far gone in this, and I don't have my finger on the pulse of this one. How are they judging if somebody's under the influence of marijuana since it's legal? There's no
an issue.
There's no breathalyzer. You have to go on your FSTs, your field sobriety test, or to get a DRE in there to do their voodoo.
Exactly.
Yes.
Yeah, it's been complicated. I haven't really followed up as much recently. I did when I retired because I thought I was going to do the expert witness stuff because I really enjoyed it. And I would never throw another cop under the bus. I would have them please something out if I thought it was wrong. My report would reflect where there would be inconsistencies. But it's, that was right in the beginning of COVID when I retired and found that this would be my path forward. And there was just no interest in hiring people. That nobody knew what to do with their money at that point. Everybody was not putting experts forward. They were all holding their money. And there just wasn't cops making arrests. It just wasn't a priority. So I kind of got away from that and I haven't really been involved in it too much since.
So your retirement, you touched on it a little bit in the beginning.
Not graceful.
And that it's a tough thing because when I retired, I didn't go out the way. You have this vision of how you're going to grow. You're going to get the walkout. You're going to get the shadow box. You're going to retire. What you think retiring with dignity is. So why don't you tell us when it was time to hang it up?
So when I had that body camera incident, which turned into an IA in early 2019, I thought that was not only the end of my career where I wouldn't make it to retirement, I planned on it being the end of my life as well. And when I got past that, got through those moments, got to the end of 19, I ended up with a shoulder injury that was not work-related, but it was debilitating. And I had bicep tendinosis done in September of 19, so I was out for the next 4 months, and that brought me to the end of the year. So I knew after the body camera thing that it was my time to go. I recognized that I was not seen as a part of the future of the agency, and I recognized that would be a difficult moment to get past professionally within the four walls of the building. So it was time. And the end of that year, end of 19 was 20 years, and it was just time to go. So I took my 50%. I took my medical.
Oh, you got medical with your 50?
I got medical,
That's big. That's
big.
I
I was one of the last few in New Jersey where you were allowed to do that. And because I was still a tier 1 or whatever they were calling them. I don't know.
They're like tier 3 now.
Yeah, I've not kept up on that either. But the town that I worked in, the one great thing that they did for us, there was this loophole in our contract where the wording was a little banged up. And if you worked 20 years with the agency, you got your medical. So the intent of that was you needed to work at least 20 years with the agency to get your medical, because they didn't want someone coming in with 15 years on a job and then working 10 for the town, and then the town stuck with your medical.
Well, it also guards against the lateral move, the
Correct.
lateral hires that do 10 years and
Correct.
sail off.
Correct. It wasn't phrased right in our contract, which we never brought to anybody's attention. But once it was recognized that it was possible to bounce at 20 and still get your medical, that's what a bunch of us started doing.
Because that's the money. That's the money
100%.
right there. But now you're looking at this future. Do you have an idea what you were going to do when you retired?
No,
Wow.
Grace was not something I had on the way out the door. I didn't retire with purpose, other than the proverbial Walmart greeter idea, which obviously is not in our DNA to do as cops, even though we think it's a funny joke when you're getting to that stage of your career. I didn't know. And quite frankly, the plan was for my wife to accelerate her career, and I was going to stay at home with the kids. But then it's like everything else at that time period, and then COVID. And then you had all the civil unrest. And I was sitting at home on the couch, just listening to my buddies that I was just shoulder to shoulder with, weeks, months before, getting their asses handed to them, whether it was COVID related, whether it was riot related. And I literally started losing my marbles, and I needed something to do. I needed purpose. I needed to be involved. So I tried getting to get into the command center in Trenton for Mercer County. That wasn't helpful. So what I did, wrongfully so, but it was all I could think of, is I just started leaving 6-packs on people's porches. So when they got home, they had a couple beers to pop open and relax. Not a great way to...
Your heart's in the right place.
Yeah, heart's in the right place, but psychologically, you don't want to be starting feeding people alcohol in their worst moments. So, but what that led me to was a greater relationship with one friend that I had that lived locally in my town where I live now, and not the town I worked in, but also in Mercer County. And he was a detective sergeant in Trenton, and he was just grateful that he was being seen. And he was losing traction with the people that were working for him. He was losing traction with his administration. He was losing traction with the community, and he was disheartened by just the way that things were going. And he was also having trouble at home as a result. And he was posting really bad things on social media about his relationships, his wife in particular. And I was like, man, dude, this is not good. So I reached out to him. I'm like, how can I help you? He goes, I'm good. As long as you see me being obnoxious on Facebook, I'm good. When I stop sharing things, that's probably when I'm in trouble. I'm like, interesting.
Well, that was very upfront with him.
Yeah.
Because normally it's just, no, I'm good.
Yeah. But he knew I wasn't the guy to bullshit. Yeah. And what I learned in the end was I was the only one asking the questions. And I think that's something very important to remember, especially with our cop and first responder friends and family, is ask the questions because you may be the only one.
The Suffering Podcast welcomes our newest sponsor, Keto Revive. Ketamine infusions that are personalized, accessible, and holistic. Proven treatments for post-traumatic stress, depression, anxiety, chronic pain, neuropathic pain, and so much more. Keto Revive is physician-operated with customized treatments tailored to you and an outstanding support system. Keto Revive offers first responder special discounts. So try something new. Proven treatments. Located in Wyckoff, New Jersey. To find out more, visit Keto Revive at ketorevive.com. Let's start healing today. So when I ask the question, there's 3 responses I do not accept. Fine, good, okay.
Yeah.
I don't accept those.
Yeah.
Because you're not. There's nobody in the world that's fine. That's, most of the people in this world, when they say, hey, David, how you doing? I'm good. Because if I don't know you,
right,
or it's almost rude to give anything else but that answer. It's like,
yep. My favorite response sometimes is, do you really want to know? And then people are like, just trying to, yeah.
Not
exactly.
really.
Yeah.
Most people don't want to know.
They don't.
But those three answers, I said, no, you're going to have to do better than that.
Yeah, and that's how it was with him. And it was July 27th, and he stopped sharing stuff. And I was like, oh, damn. So I reached out, didn't answer, And finally, I talked to him that night, and he was like, I'm not good, but I'll be okay. Let's go out on Friday for lunch. I know I have time off, and I'll fill you in. Cool. Friday never came. And Tuesday morning, he was found dead. So.
And you're left with the would've, should've, and could've.
To this very moment, sitting here talking to you. And I found a way to live with it by putting myself in a position to make sure that my goal is to never let that happen to anybody again. I couldn't do anything for him.
So with Mike, I was the last person to see him alive. We recorded here in the parking lot, and that night he did it. Now, like your friend, I saw his life imploding. I watched it. And what I should have done is said, you need to get off this show, go get yourself help, and the seat will always be open for you. But here's the way my brain worked. If I take this away from him, because everything else in his life was going haywire, if I take this away from him, then it's just going to be lights out. And that's what I was afraid of. I don't think I could have lived with that. Since Mike, I try to take good out of every shitty situation. Here's the thing. I am way more proactive now.
Me too.
I will be that proverbial pain in the ass.
Yeah.
Because with your friend, like you just said, if you were that proverbial friend in the ass, woulda, shoulda, coulda, fill in the blank. And
I didn't know, though. I didn't know enough.
Yeah.
And that's where my heart aches, is I just didn't know what I didn't know.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't know how to do it differently. I was just being a good friend. But now I know. I've made it my goal to know.
So how are you doing that?
The night that he died, so he passed away in the morning. That night, I wrote an article. I didn't know, for LinkedIn, self-published on LinkedIn. It immediately hit like 75,000 people within 12 hours.
Wow.
And then it got picked up by some national media. And it was more of a poem than it was an article. And I had started writing a little bit up to that point. And, shameless plug is my book started out as a suicide note.
A Resilient Life.
Yeah. So that wasn't originally a book or a plan. It started out as a suicide note. And my buddy's death is what made me recalibrate and recognize that I was also in trouble. But for me, the best way to heal myself or help myself was to do something for others.
It seemed to work in your police life.
Yes.
And your EMT life. And when you went and did the
Correct.
internship.
It was always the escape of my own problems, was to help somebody else. And in return, I was helping myself.
I always say my help is not totally selfless.
Correct.
It isn't. And
I agree.
I don't think, and I know that sounds kind of weird, but I don't think anybody who gives another person help is doing it selflessly. There are benefits. You're not looking for something direct.
Correct.
But it's those collateral things that really sort of hit your heart.
Yeah.
And make your heart full, the same way the job used to make your heart full.
So when you look at it from a social science or psychology perspective, Dr. Seligman, who is just like the premier psychologist of our time, and he came up with the PERMA theory, which is positive emotion, engagement, relationships, meaning, and accomplishment, the 5 pillars of well-being. And when we help others, we are hitting so many of those pillars of PERMA, starting with positive emotion. So when you're trying to increase your own well-being by helping others, it works. It works. So now, not only are you feeling good for what you're doing for somebody else, you're engaged with them, you're having that human connection, you're building the relationship, you have meaning because you're supporting them, and then, holy cow, they're doing great. That's your accomplishment.
You have children, correct?
3 that I know of. Nah, 3.
And 7 that he doesn't know of. So if you thought you were your 3 children's sole source of care, meaning if you're gone, they're left to their own devices. There is no way in the world you would be able to end your life.
Correct.
There is no way in the world because you have purpose.
Well, I'm going to pull that back for a second because my buddy had 2 kids. His kids are the same age as my kids. They go to school together. And he did not see that. He stuck around for his son's birthday, which was Monday. And then Tuesday, he took his life.
And he had a wife that was, their relationship was falling apart?
Correct.
All right. So in his mind, they're better off without him.
Correct. Well, yes, I think that was certainly part of it. What I say now when I do talks and speeches, first of all, I dedicate everything that I teach and talk about to him. He's the first thing I talk about. He's the first slide. And at this point, I've come to the realization that I don't think he ever really wanted to die. I just don't think he knew how to live.
With Mike, and maybe this will clarify for you, their peripheral vision, when you're in that
Very narrow.
You've been in that spot, and I've been in that spot. Your peripheral vision is here, where I'm only looking at, like, say I'm just looking at your eyeglasses. That's all I'm looking at. I can't see all this other stuff around me, and that's what his death did to me. It opened up my peripheral vision.
Same thing, same experience I had.
Yeah, I mean, you're starting to see all the collateral damage, the people hurt, the people crying. You went to the funeral. I know you went to the funeral, and you're seeing everything that happened. And you're like, holy shit, when I was in that spot, this would have been happening around my corpse.
Yeah.
And it's a
reality check. It's a gut check.
Yeah.
For sure. And that is what propelled me to the next steps, to the next phases. And it was right at the time when New Jersey was putting forth the New Jersey Office of Resiliency for Law Enforcement. And it was a great initiative. Unfortunately, it came out of a lot of tragedy. We had so many suicides in that 18-month span between, towards the end of 19 and, his in 2020. And man, it was so impactful that at the time the Attorney General was just floored by what was going on, that it was his initiative to help us put this program together. And it went really well for a significant amount of time. At this point, we've trained all 36,000 cops in the state of New Jersey with the Resiliency program, which is fantastic. My
one problem with and I think the Resiliency program was started with the greatest intention.
Agreed. Follow-up was not good.
It's been getting bastardized a little bit. And I'm sorry, I'm not shitting on this because I don't know if you know who Billy Mazer is.
Very good friend.
Okay, Billy and I went to high school together. And I know he was integral in bringing this here. It's an appointed position. Yeah. All right, so you know the difference between a good boss and a bad boss. We've already had this discussion. Yeah. So bosses are going to put people in those positions. Not necessarily the right people. Maybe the people that want the cushy position, the extra overtime. It's a gift to some bosses, not everyone. This is not a generalized term. And those people who shouldn't be in those positions, who are on the A team, because there's an A team and a B team.
Always.
And if I'm on the B team and I'm having some issues, I'm not going to one of the Chiefs guys. I'm not doing it. Yeah. And that's the sticky spot.
I think it was kind of weeded out through some of those classes. You had to want to be in that 3-day class to be an RPO or an MRT. And for the audience, a master resiliency trainer, an MRT, and a resiliency program officer, which was like I don't want to say the next level down, but it was, instead of getting it from the FBI, you were getting it from the MRT. So the RPOs were responsible for instituting the resiliency program within their agencies. And sometimes they were the chief's boy. There's no doubt. But when they went to that class, it was humbling, I think. And they came back a different person to the agency than the chief sent to the class.
That's
not
encouraging.
Not always.
That's encouraging.
I think more times than not, though, because you're looking at the numbers, you're looking at the data. It was a very academic approach to the problem, and I think you can't help but recognize that, dang, if I don't put my best foot forward on this, it's on me.
I really hope that they take that resiliency project, or however it morphs, whatever the next level it is, and they expand it to not only current officers, but to retired officers.
So that's how I got involved, because there was no retired officers involved at that time. And when the Mercer County Chief Resiliency Officer recognized what my poem or article was and how it was attracting attention, And somebody came to him and goes, anybody talk to Dave recently? And he's like, no, why? He goes, you should probably read this. It ain't good. And he's like, oh, shoot. So he called me and was like, let's go out to lunch. I'm like, no, I'm good. And there it is, right?
There it is.
And he's like, yeah, no, buddy. You can either go out to lunch and have this conversation, or I can help you out with a 30-day vacation in South Florida. And I took the lunch. And
Florida sounds pretty good.
So it did, yeah. But I took the lunch, not in July, August, though. It was,
too hot.
Yeah. So we took the lunch, and he explained the program to me that they were just putting together. They had one class of RPOs already done, and I went into the second class. And the goal was to have me coordinate the retirees for the program, because there wasn't anybody doing that yet. And they recognized through my strife of that suicide that there was nobody reaching out. We circle the wagons on each other really well when things go sideways, but we forget about the people that aren't in the room.
It's the funniest thing in the world, because you'll see this even when you were on the job. You saw the guys who were drinking too much. They started ramping up their drinking, and then inevitably one of the cops will get a DUI. Happens all the time. Everybody will say, what an asshole. Ruined his life.
Until it's them.
Nobody asked why he's drinking so much. Nobody said a word about that.
Yeah.
So that's encouraging, and I like that stuff too. And you're also involved with this Resilient Minds on the Front Lines.
So Resilient Minds was not my idea. I wish I could take credit for it.
But you are. I'm going to tell you right now, you're the poster child, because if you go there you are.
That's hysterical. And I haven't been on the website in a while, so I'm going to have to go back and check that out. So the Chief Resiliency Officer for the state, along with the Chief Resiliency Officer from Mercer County at the time, had put together I don't call it a podcast, but a video series that they called Resilient Minds on the Front Lines during COVID, to help people see some of these tools that positive psychology was teaching through Dr. Seligman, coming out of the University of Pennsylvania. And they made video series out of it. And it was really impactful. People were watching these things, giving feedback. And what ended up happening was they saw an opportunity to help people from a different perspective, through a different lens. So they both had resigned their positions with the government. What the guy from the state was coming up on retirement. The guy from Mercer County was retired, and that was his appointed position for the county. And so they formed the nonprofit Resilient Minds on the Front Lines together, and it has really been impactful. They took the 3-day program that we were giving on the state level, and they've pushed it out there as a nonprofit around the country, and they've done an amazing job. And I'm really proud to have been one of their facilitators as well.
They're expanding the whole mental health issue inside law enforcement, because how many people had to die before they realized that this is an issue? When I was having my issues in 2013, the only thing I ever saw was in the back of a magazine. And I'm not going to mention the name, because they've since done some things I don't like. They've let out officers' information. But you have Stephanie Samuels from Copline. She's a good friend. So it's starting to happen. Mm-hmm. It's starting to happen, which is a great thing, because an administrator should be all over this, because they hire a guy, they invest money in a guy, they should want to keep him on the job for 25 years, 30 years, whatever they got to do.
So I will say, as the state program of resiliency had started to grow wings and expand a little bit, one of the things that was most concerning was, how do we get leadership buy-in? And they put together what's called the Chiefs Peer Program, and that was really successful. They did a couple classes of that, essentially recognizing that chiefs have different stressors. They're dealing with both the town management, and they're trying to manage their people and their agency at the same time. And they can't talk to somebody within the 4 walls of the building, because no one's really going to get it. I don't care how close you are with your deputy chief.
You can't talk to an officer. It
doesn't work. So what do we do? So let's create this Chiefs Peer Program, and we use the same foundations as the resiliency program itself. And so now they have each other to lean on using the same framework. And they're like, oh, so this is what you were teaching these guys. Yeah. So now there's a lot of chief and leadership buy-in, which is fantastic.
Well, I hope it continues to expand, because this universe of ours is.
I think that's a challenge right now. Unfortunately, the chief resiliency officer, the interim person, she had left for family reasons. They put back the temporary guy that was running it, who's amazing, a really good friend, and he's just such a talent. But he retired for the third or fourth time, and now I don't know what's happening with the program. To be quite honest with you, I've tried to reach out. I don't think there's anybody truly running it right now, which is unfortunate. I hate to see it go away. I'm concerned about how state politics are influencing that, and we'll see what happens. I know this past summer we did a pilot program for a peer-to-peer program. The plan was to expand the resiliency program to the next level and have true peer-to-peer coaches. And we put together a really nice program, and it's been authorized by PTC as a training program.
So you said something in the beginning, and it puts a nice bow on everything, is most most police officers just want to be seen.
Yeah.
Just want to be seen. And even chiefs.
Absolutely.
And I have some very dear friends who were chiefs, and I have some people I don't care for that were chiefs. But that we all just want to be seen in that program, and what you're doing gives that opportunity for these people to be seen. Yeah. So listen, David, we're coming to the end of this thing. Anything you want to plug? Anything you want to throw out your social media?
Best thing that I ever did as we came to this stage of my life was I went back to school. I got my master's in applied positive psychology from Penn under Dr. Seligman. The opportunity there to learn about the science of all this stuff that we're trying to do is amazing. And the reason that it's so important to me, one is I graduated high school at a 1.8, college with a 2.8. And now at almost 50 years old, I have a graduate degree from an Ivy League university. So speaking of PERMA, that just like hits all of the 5 pillars for me, especially the accomplishment piece. And the reason I ended up doing that was because we do such a great job at recognizing awareness. We have people speaking all over the country, cops that have no business in front of a podium or teaching a class, telling the world about their woes and their sorrows. And I'm grateful for that because we have to remember we're not alone in this process, but we're beyond the awareness piece. We need to start giving fix-it tools. And positive psychology holds that key to unlock those tools. So I've been really excited to be able to present those tools to other people. Speaking of resilience, the science behind resilience. And as we started talking about earlier, the power of storytelling. Storytelling is healing not only for the storyteller, but for the person receiving the story. There's 2 key points to that. There's the transportation narrative where you see yourself in that story and you feel less isolated. Someone else has gone through that too. And you kind of look at where they ended up and how they got there and maybe mirror some of that and try it yourself. But there's also the restorative narrative piece of storytelling where you're like, dang, that's awesome. I'm going to try that. That's going to fix me. And you can heal through other people's journeys and reestablish your own and where you're going from the moment where you are. And that can be done in literature. It can be done in visual art. It can be done in music. The visual art piece is really special for me because that was part of my thesis for school. And I ended up being a part of the creation of the new exhibit at the National Law Enforcement Officers Memorial and Museum in D.C., which is called Officers as Artists. We had cops just paint or draw or whatever they wanted to do. And we picked, I think, 75 out of 100 and some odd that were submitted, and they're all down there on exhibit in the DuPont Hall, I think for almost a full year, so until next October. So if you're down in DC, absolutely go see that.
How can our listeners and watchers follow you?
You can find me mostly on LinkedIn professionally, just David Berez on LinkedIn, and all of my information, contact information is there, email address, and even my phone number's on there because if you're having a problem, I want you to call. I don't care what time of the day it is. I'll walk you through it. I'm not a psychologist. I am not a therapist. I'm not a clinician, but I'm a really good friend and an amazing listener, and I'll help you through it.
One of the things that you're doing is something that I pride myself in. So I'm a collector of resources. Okay? I am not a therapist. I trust me, I'm not a therapist.
Never even played one on TV.
I did stay at a Holiday Inn Express last night.
Nice.
But I'm a collector of resources.
Me too. A networker.
And I have a handful of therapists. I have a handful of psychologists, psychiatrists, whatever. And those are the people that I direct to.
100%.
But here's the value of that storytelling, like you were telling. So if I go out there and I tell how I got through, this is how I did it. It may open up the conversation.
Yes.
And then, okay, awesome. Go see this person. Go see this person. Go to David. Give him a call. You got different resources I want. So while you're a collector of resources that are extremely valuable, and with your personal experience, it adds more credence to it.
Yeah, there's a philosophy out there called QPR: question, persuade, and then refer. So if you question somebody and they're not being forthcoming, or when they are forthcoming, you can persuade them to go get help. And if they're not getting the help, then hey, here's some resources. You do it when you're ready. QPR is a really, really simple, easy way to try to get people the things that they need.
So we're coming to the end of this thing here. And I always end every show the same way, because you've seen a lot, you've experienced a lot, and that suffering that you've seen, experienced, and had your hands in, really got your hands dirty, it's had to taught you something. If it hasn't taught you something, what a wasted experience. So what do you think it's taught you?
So I'll go back to a Chris Peterson saying, who's one of the founders of positive psychology, and that is, other people matter. And if you can put others before yourself when it's appropriate, help other people out. And that's what I've learned. That's what's helped me along the way. But I will also just step back from that a little bit. And just like when you're on the airplane, we talk about it often, the analogy is always there. You got to make sure your own oxygen mask is on first before you put anybody else's on. Because if you're not healthy, the only thing you're doing is transferring your drama and your trauma onto somebody else. So once you're in a position where you can positively support somebody and not make them worse, other people matter. Thank you, Chris Peterson, for that.
I like that. And they told us that first day at the police academy, you can't help anybody if you don't get there safely. So when you blow a red light, make sure that you look both ways, because that's number one killer of all of us.
Absolutely.
David, thank you so much for coming in. It's been great.
Thank you for having me. It was a great opportunity to be here and have this conversation.
It's been a great conversation. I think you're on the right track to doing something monumental with everything that you've learned. And that's going to do it for this episode of the Suffering Podcast, the Suffering of Resilience with David Berez. And let's think about all the stuff that we learned. Bad childhoods breed lifelong habits. It only takes one person or class to inspire. Police just want to be seen. Mental health work is never done, but most importantly, other people matter.
Yes,
I
sir.
love that. And that's going to do it for this episode. Don't forget to go to popple.com to get your digital business card. Put in the code TSP20 for a 20% discount. And, of course, follow us on all social media. That's LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Clapper, OnlyFans. Follow me at Real Kevin Donaldson. And, of course, follow the Suffering Podcast. We'll see you on the next episode.